Hey everybody, I'm Maritza Barone, and this is the Things You Can't Unhear podcast. Has there ever been a moment in your life where you heard or read or were told something that you simply could not unhear? Something that caused you to make positive changes so that you could become the best version of yourself? Well, we share this show with access to inspiring and empowering humans who will motivate you to become the happiest, healthiest, kindest, and most compassionate you. Sit back, settle in, and let this be the day you hear something that simply cannot be unheard. Hi guys, welcome back to Things You Can't Unhear. Today is a good one. Today we're talking to Efia Sulter, a mindset and manifestation coach, one of my favorite topics. She's a content creator and also a podcast host of The Manifest Edit. And she's going to give us a simple 5-step method into an aligned manifestation and tools in how we can get started to consciously create our dream life. Efia's mission is centered around empowering ambitious people to stop playing small, confidently manifest their desires, and create extraordinary lives. And that sounds pretty good to me. There's nothing that charges her up more than empowering people to step into their greatness, which is perfectly fitting for this show and, of course, the stories that we tell on it. So a little bit about Efia. She was orphaned at 14 and desperately wanted to live a normal life. But the older that she got, she realized that normal wasn't going to cut it and she wanted more. Efia went from battling chronic illness, anxiety, and depression to moving overseas from Scotland to Australia and manifesting her extraordinary life that she now lives. Now she dedicates her time, her career, and her life to empowering other people to break out of normal and into the extraordinary. So tune in and tune on. Let's learn how to manifest our biggest desires. Welcome, Efia, to Things You Can't Unhear. It's great to have you here today.
And I'm really excited to be here as well.
I'm excited today because we're going to learn how to manifest our dream life. A lot of our listeners know what manifestation is. Some of them may not, but I just wanted to see if you could give us just an overall explanation of what manifestation is and how it works.
Yes. So the simplest way I can explain manifestation is the process of making something real. So if you've ever heard the expression thoughts become things, often without context, that can feel like, oh, I just think about something and bring it into my real life, which can have both positive and negative connotations depending on what you're thinking, and people get really tripped out by that. But it's not just thinking about something, it's also the actions, the beliefs, everything that takes place in between that being something that would be nice to have for one day or be a wish to being able to hold it in your hand or physically experience that is manifestation. So we're all manifesting all the time, but many of us are doing it subconsciously. So when we talk about manifestation, what we're talking about is bringing more conscious awareness to that process so that you can build that deeper relationship with your subconscious mind to bring in more of the things that you actually want, and to consciously manifest your extraordinary life.
And less of the things that you don't want.
Yes, less of the things you don't want as well.
I love it. I've successfully manifested some tangible things in my life, and you actually feel like magic when it comes into fruition, and you're like, I created that with my thoughts and my energy, and there's no denying it when you know you've done it. It's quite fascinating, isn't it?
It's so powerful to see everything come together.
So, as a manifestation coach, how do you help people on their own manifestation journeys?
I think the most important thing that I do as a manifestation coach is helping people to get clarity. And what this will look like for a lot of people is, number one, either coming to me and saying that they have no idea what they would like to manifest, or number two, having some idea but not really knowing how all of the pieces are going to fit together. And what I believe is that we do all know what we desire to manifest, but it's actually about creating those internal permission slips where we will actually allow ourselves to go after them. And Gay Hendricks, I don't know if you've ever read the book The Big Leap, but Gay Hendricks has this concept in there which he calls upper limiting, which is where we all have invisible tolerance limits on how much happiness, fulfillment, success that we'll allow ourselves to feel before we begin to feel uncomfortable and subconsciously start to sabotage it. And so what I'll find is that a lot of my clients, yeah, they have the fear of failure, but more prevalent than that fear of failure is actually the fear of success.
That's fascinating, isn't it? Because we think that's what we want, and then we get it, and we're like, you have that realization. And, what does that involve if this does come into fruition in my life? And what are the things that are going to change around me? It is really interesting when we dig into it on a deep level like that. Like, I'd love to know some of your own personal experiences of what you perhaps have brought into your life or even your clients.
Yeah, so many things. I think one of my favorite manifestations has definitely been the apartment that I'm living in now. And so I've been living in this apartment building for 3 or 4 years now. And I went away traveling, and while I was traveling, the initial apartment that I was in went on sale. And so throughout the first couple of lockdowns in Melbourne, what would happen was we'd be having flat viewings, but we're in lockdown, so can't go anywhere. So we'd be stood outside our apartment waiting while people walked around our house, and also having that fear of, okay, well, if someone does buy it and we're in lockdown, how are we going to find somewhere new to live? So what actually ended up happening was manifesting a new apartment in this building on the same floor, just around the corner, in a way better apartment. And it was the easiest move I've ever had in like a much more beautiful space. And so many things had to come together for this to align. And it was like the last time to do viewings before we went into a deeper lockdown where there was no viewings at all. I only got to like view it once, and I was like, is this the place? Am I going to get accepted for this? And everything just came together at the last moment in a really beautiful way. And now I'm so glad that actually the house did end up being for sale. And what can often happen with manifestation is things that look like the worst thing to ever happen, or look like they're going to have such a negative impact on our life. Like at the time where the house was for sale, it felt like, no, I love living here, this is terrible. But it actually led me to something so much better. So often when things feel like they're not working out, they're often just realigning to rearrange in a way which is actually a lot more fulfilling, and gives us that deeper level of satisfaction.
Such a beautiful way to think about it as well. And there's all those synchronicities and there's divine timings that just lead you down this one pathway that is destined for you. I actually manifested the house. We've moved recently too, and I completely consciously manifested the house that we got after quite a few applications that we'd put in that got rejected. But I wrote a list of exactly like the physical things that I wanted within the house, and then also the feeling that I wanted to feel when I was in the house. And I meditated on it over 30 days. And it was when we walked into the house, because we ended up renting it without physically seeing it. It was all done online. And we walked into the house and I laughed because literally every single thing that I had written down on my list was in this house, and it was right in front of me. And it's funny because I did ask my husband, I'm manifesting the house that we're going to get. Do you have any requests? And he said to me, yep, just a doggy door for the dog. And that was the one
That
thing
is so sweet.
that did not turn up because I didn't ask for it.
I love that.
So what type of things do people manifest? We just heard that both of us have manifested where we are living. What types of other things, like is it relationships, love, friendships, careers? What have you seen? What have you worked with? What's the most common thing?
Yeah, absolutely. All of those things that you've mentioned. I had one of my clients who, when she joined one of my programs, she was like, oh, I'd love to manifest a relationship, but I'm just beginning to think that it's not going to happen for me. And she was kind of feeling really frustrated and disheartened. And I actually ended up checking in with her, I think it was maybe just over a year later. And she's like, oh, I've actually just bought a house with my partner. And she'd met someone just after she'd finished the course. They fell in love very quickly, and they just felt like they were soulmates and bought their first house together. For some people, it's career success, business success. And I think for most people, that underlying all of those physical, tangible things is actually about how we want to feel about ourselves and how we want to feel in our body. So, yeah, for both of us, it's great having these spaces, but what it's really about is how we feel in these spaces.
Yeah, that's so, so true. Well, guys, we actually are going to learn how to do this today. So start thinking of what you want to manifest as you're listening to this podcast episode. But Efia, I do want to know your story. I want people to learn how you came about into this line of work and what inspired you in your pathway to get here. So tell us a little bit about who you are and perhaps your upbringing and what led you here today.
So I was actually in the foster care system until I was age 3. And that at that point I was adopted. And so for me, growing up as a little Black girl in Scotland, it was definitely an interesting time. But I did have like a really great childhood. But unfortunately, when I was 10, my mom got diagnosed with breast cancer, and very quickly her health began to deteriorate. So went from one day just being a 10-year-old kid to growing up very quickly and also kind of taking on that parent role and looking after someone who was very sick as well. So that was a really big change in life, and definitely was also the onset of the anxiety that I now experience. And unfortunately, my mom passed away when I was 14. So that left my sister, my brother, and I orphaned, as she was a single parent. So we, went from being kids to then being kids looking after a parent to then having our worlds completely flipped on their head. And for me, throughout that period of time, there was a lot of kind of questions around my identity. Who am I without parents? Who am I as a Black girl growing up in Scotland? Who am I, like, being surrounded by friends who I perceive to have like very normal lives and living a life that felt like so far away from that for me. So a belief that I really adopted from the age of 14 was a desire to live a normal life and to have the things that everyone else was having. I wanted to be able to go to uni and have the job and, follow that typical path that's laid out for you. For me, that was like my dream. My one desire was to have all of those things, but it felt like I was going to have to work harder than everyone else to get to the same places. But I did end up having all those things I wanted. I ended up getting into uni. I ended up acing my grades and also somewhat being a bit of an overachiever. And I thought I was going down the path that I actually wanted until I got to my master's year at uni, which is when I decided to go back. So I'd finished my first degree and I just felt like I didn't know what I wanted to do for my career. I didn't have that like strong desire or the strong inkling that this is what you're going to do next, which is what I felt like a lot of people around me have. So what seemed like the next step for me to take was to go back to uni and to do my master's because I was good at studying. And it very quickly became apparent that I had done it for the wrong reasons and that I wasn't enjoying my second time round at uni. I was actually miserable. More than not enjoying it, I was honestly like really depressed. I found it difficult to show up to my classes. I was experiencing severe anxiety. I'd also lost my job due to some unfortunate circumstances around uni timetabling. So I had a lot of flux and just feeling like I wasn't grounded in anything, least of all myself. And it just got to a point where I just felt like I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't handle it anymore. I was truly lost. And I ended up going to therapy, which was something that I felt was going to help me turn my life around. Unfortunately, therapy didn't work out. I think something that not a lot of people mention is that finding a therapist is like finding a good friend. Like you have to really align with them and have a really good relationship with them, and that's not just going to be necessarily off the bat. And so for me and the therapist that I had, we just did not click at all, and it just didn't work out, which was a shame because it was something I'd wanted for so long. But it was a catalyst that I needed to make some changes in my life and to begin approaching some things differently and to build that level of self-awareness of how I actually wanted my life to go, and also to begin to dream and hope again, which was something that I'd lost for a really long time. And so in doing that, at this stage, it was around 2015 was when I first started learning about conscious manifestation, started hearing things like the law of attraction. And I had actually grew up Buddhist. So Buddhism does have like a lot of parallels with spirituality, even though they're not the same. So when I was hearing and learning about all these concepts, it didn't seem that far away from me. I'm like, oh yeah, I could see how this would make sense. And it just felt like I was remembering something that I'd forgotten. And so on my own conscious manifestation journey, it completely changed my life. Like I went from that place at the beginning of the year where I honestly didn't want to live anymore to the end of the year where I had just built this really deep relationship with myself. I like truly loved myself, and I had somewhere where that I wanted to go in life. I decided that I was going to move from Scotland to Australia. I manifested my first thing, my vision board. I manifested travel. I manifested who was my soulmate at the time and all of these experiences. And I was like, whoa, I can actually consciously shape and create my reality. And more than just creating how I would like my life to look, I get to actually experience it. And that really flipped a switch for me. And at that time, I was also blogging. So I've been content creating for the past 9 years now. And initially it was like kind of student blog, it evolved into a travel blog. And then I started talking about confidence and mindset and all of these shifts that I was having and how I was working with brands with like 1,000 followers and traveling the world for free. And people would ask me questions about it. And then when March 2020 rolled around, I had just released my first solo travel ebook. And then the world dramatically changed and no one was traveling. I was like, well, I'm just going to continue to talk about some of the mindset stuff, but talk about it on a grander scale. And then I realized that that was actually the space that I wanted to be in. And if you're in the online space, you'll kind of know this, but you are kind of told to have a niche, stick to your niche, talk to that one thing in your niche. And so because travel was the thing that I'd picked for myself, I felt like I couldn't talk about all of the other things. And that I was portraying travel online to be the biggest part of my life because that was the niche I had chosen. But actually the mindset and the manifestation practices were what really excited me and what were really filling most of my life. So it seemed quite a natural evolution for me to begin talking about it, even though I didn't initially realize it was something that I was going to coach in. And then the coaching journey evolved from there. I think something else that's really important to note is this wasn't my first business. This was my second business. Previously in 2018, I had started a digital agency because both of my degrees were in digital marketing. So I was like, oh, this is the path I'm supposed to follow. And maybe I just didn't like digital marketing because I was working for someone else. But if I have my own business, then things will be different. And I felt those same feelings I had when I went back to my master's year at uni with like, I'm not supposed to be here. This isn't what I want to do. Um, and I think this is something that a lot of people experience is going down the path that they feel like they should be doing. And maybe things will get better. Maybe I can just stick it out for longer rather than going after what we truly want. So a lot of my work is helping people to live their extraordinary lives. And a big part of that is letting go of anything that doesn't serve you and that isn't resonating with you, and making sure that you're truly living your life for yourself, not for other people's expectations of who you should be or what you should do.
Oh, so many beautiful things to comment on right there. And yes, you're right. Pathways change. And, I've definitely had that in my life too, where, you embark on one pathway and you end up circling around into a completely different area. And then if you actually step back and look at why did I do that in the first place? It did lead you to where you ended up, which is, what you experienced as well. But thank you, going back to the beginning of your story. Thank you for sharing all of that. You've obviously been through a lot and you've done an amazing job at finding your own happiness again. And like you said, you healed yourself in a way. You tried the therapy and you tried, different modalities out there that are on offer. And the beauty of your story is that you found the healing within yourself and were able to do that so powerfully that you hold the power within that now. You can do that whenever you need to, and you can teach it through your lived experience.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, well, now's the time, guys. Get ready for your lesson from Efia into how to manifest your life. Efia, you've got a 5-step method for aligned manifestation. Do you want to take us through those steps? How do we begin? Where do we kick off?
Yes, absolutely. I would love to take you through these. And kind of like a lot of points in my journey, the way that I came up with these 5 steps was actually through an experience of mine that didn't go exactly exactly as planned. So I'd done my move from Scotland to Australia, and I'd learned about conscious manifestation and calling all of these incredible things into my reality. And in 2018, I was like, yes, I am the vision board queen. I can call anything in I want. And I made another vision board and I was like, yep, this is it. And I looked back on that vision board in 2020 and I realized not a single thing on that vision board had manifested, not one. And when I looked over those things, and I also looked at how that vision board made me feel, what I realized is I had been putting things on there because I thought that's where I should be at in my life, or I'd seen other people, oh, other people have this, I should have this. Oh, if I have a certain number of followers, this will make me look cool and seem legitimate. But none of those things were like things that I wanted on a soul level. And more importantly, like they didn't align with the person that I wanted to be. And it was at that point where a light bulb kind of went off for me, in that a lot of people will start their manifestation process at what do I want to have? But from my perspective, there's something so much more important that comes before that, that will inform your entire manifestation process moving forward. So this is what actually led me to creating the vibes method for aligned manifestation. And it's not only completely changed the way that I manifest, but it's also changed things for my clients as well. So the first step of the vibes method is embodying the vibe of your higher self. And what that means is, rather than thinking about what you want to have, which we will get into later, who do you want to be? Like, what do you want to create in your life as this person? Like, how do you want to feel? How do you want to show up in the world? What's the impact you want to make? What's the legacy you want to leave? What's that vision that you want to create for yourself? Getting really clear on what your values are and how you are currently living in alignment with those values leads you into a much better step to then set those intentions from. And especially if you're someone who's like, oh, I don't really know what I want. Well, let's just peel it back a layer to who you want to be and what your values are. And then you can set intentions from those values to make sure that you're living in deeper alignment with them. So I personally believe that your higher self is not a better version of you, it's a truer version of you. I believe that we all came into this world as like divine, innocent, beautiful human beings. And then the adversities of life, the experiences of life, other people's experiences, which have been projected onto us as our beliefs, which we've adopted and believed to be our own, but actually they're other people's. All of these things have kind of like warped that sense of divine essence that we came into the world with. So I believe that connecting with your higher self is a return to that. And it's unlearning everything that isn't part of that. So then we move into the second step, which is now we can begin to look at our intentions. Okay, now we know who you want to be. What intentions are aligned with that version of yourself that you want to be? And we want to make sure that we are looking to the future. So it's not just like, well, I don't want to be broke. I don't want to be miserable. I don't want to have rubbish relationships. But you're actually looking at the things that you consciously want to create, not like consciously uncreating, because it just evokes a different feeling. And if you are ever struggling to resonate with something, especially around the manifestation space, and I'm kind of going a little bit on a tangent here, but for example, people will be like, oh, affirmations don't work. And I'm like, okay, so let's say you're waking up to someone every day and each morning you wake up to them and they say, oh, you look rubbish. You look so ugly today. I just don't know why you look like that. You are just like so annoying. Like imagine you woke up to that every single day. How would that make you feel? Now think of the opposite. That is how affirmations work, is because of the way they make you feel. So when you're thinking about things in manifestation, check in with yourself, do that gut check with yourself of how does it make you feel. So when you're setting your intentions, does it feel good for you to say, I don't want to be broke anymore? Or does it feel good for you to say, I want X income amount, or I want to be wildly abundant, I want to be wildly wealthy? So, get into that process of connecting with your own intuition as a guidance system. From here, we're moving into energetic blocks and boundaries, which is like, I know who I want to be, I know what I want to have, I'm unstoppable. And then this is where all the limiting beliefs come up and say, no, you're not. So everything that comes up that says why you couldn't have it or why you shouldn't have it, why it's not going to work for you, all of these things are limiting beliefs. Often it can be based on trauma, it can be based on past experiences, lived experience. And we want to look at all of those things. This is not something we want to hide from, but actually like, hey, I'm creating an open space to understand myself as a whole human, not just the parts that I think are socially acceptable, and creating a safe space to discover what our fears and challenges are and how we can either sit with them or move beyond them so that we can confidently create our extraordinary lives. A huge part of confidently creating your extraordinary life is looking at all of the things that stop you from getting there, because if you didn't have any of those blocks in place, you would be there already. So we all have our own blocks, and it doesn't matter how far in your journey you are or how much work you've done, there's still more to uncover. So don't feel like, wow, I have so many of these. This means I'm never going to manifest what I want, or, oh, I'm not a good person, or anything like that, because it's completely normal. And we all have these aspects of ourselves. And it's just about shining a light on that. So if you've ever heard the term shadow work, it's called shadows because it's typically parts that are in the darkness. It's parts that we're not aware of. So let's bring in awareness. Let's bring some light into those areas, and bring them to the forefront so we can move through them. At the next stage, which is balancing your feminine and masculine energy, this is the action piece that we talked about earlier. So manifestation is not just thinking about something, but is actually taking action in the direction of your desires. And we all have these different energy pools within us. Like masculine is more of the hustle, of the strategic, the energy of doing, and the feminine is more of the flow and the intuition. And neither of these is better than the other. So when I say balance, it doesn't mean you need to be 50-50, but it's like you need to look at like, how do you work best? Like I have one of my closest friends, she runs her business and like very masculine. She will have a super structured day. She's got like meetings until 8 p.m. I can't work like that. I simply couldn't work like that. I take like 2 hours to get ready in the morning because I'm just like floating through the day. So, but I understand how that works for her. And it also attracts me to her as a friend because she kind of like balances out my energy. So it's noticing like, okay, how do I feel most inspired and empowered to work? What kinds of things have I manifested in the past? And what made me feel really good about that? What steps was I taking in the past? And what feels good for me? Often we can notice that we are kind of adopting an energy pattern that doesn't align for us. So I noticed with my first business, this was during like the rise of Gary Vee. And I'm like, well, if I want to be successful, I need to be like Gary. And I was working myself into the ground. And for some people, that kind of hustle mentality really works. So I'm not saying that that's bad, but for me, it just didn't. It was really stressful, really burnt out. I also have chronic illness, endometriosis. So I have a lot of chronic fatigue. So working like that it was never going to work for me. It was realistically never going to work for me. So you need to look at like, oh, do you feel like coming into the manifestation space, it all needs to be flowy and free and intuition based? Because you're also living out of alignment if that's how you feel it needs to be, and that doesn't work for you either. So looking at the ways that you work best is what we really focus on, and balancing your feminine and masculine energy is finding the right fit for you. And then finally, the piece that really glues everything together is surrender. And that's the S of the VIAS method, which is, so surrendering the expectations and the need for everything to be perfect or for it to happen exactly on your timeline. And if things don't happen like exactly in the date that you thought you were going to happen, or you don't get the exact amount of money that you wanted to manifest, or the exact partner, you're not making it mean anything about you as a human. You're not taking it personally to mean that you're not enough. And I think that's a piece that can really derail a lot of people, is like, oh, well, if I'm not manifesting things on my timeline, then I'm not good at it. Like I'm a manifestation coach, and there are some things that have taken me years to manifest. It doesn't make it any less special or powerful to me when I eventually do get it. It's just part of the process. There may be things I need to work through before I actually get it. So things manifesting quickly is not necessarily a measure of success. For me, success is not an outcome, it's a feeling.
Wow, that's amazing. So we've got vibes, the vibration, the intentions, the blocks, the energy, balancing the masculine and feminine, and then surrendering. There's a lot there. There's, especially for people who may not have done it before, don't get scared, because it may sound scary and a lot of work, but it's really not. So let's put that into an example if we can. So for someone who is listening and perhaps wants to manifest a new career for themselves, just like you did, just like I did, they're working in a job that they are unhappy in, they're not earning the money that they deserve, they're not following their purpose. Okay, so what do? Do we sit down? Do we write out how we, what we want to bring in? What are the actual tangible ways in which we can manifest?
So the actual process of manifesting it is going to be vary a lot from person to person. But if we're just talking about a hypothetical person who I do know on a very deep
Yeah.
level, just to say that Let's start with your values. Okay, before you're just like looking into a new job because you're miserable here, you need to know like what you actually value in a job. Like, is it having the freedom to work from home? Is it having an office culture where you are appreciated? Getting really clear on the kinds of things that are important to you, and also what specifically is making you unhappy about where you are now. Because there's no point like not spending time knowing like, oh, I'm just unhappy and I want to move, and then you get your new job and you're finding you've actually replicated the exact same situation because you
Seen
haven't like
that.
rectified all the things from previously.
Seen that, done that many times. Yeah.
Yeah. So we need to actually get super clear here, values, and then like, who do you want to be in this role? Do you want to be in a leadership role? Do you want to be like managing a small team? Like, what specifically? Get really clear on that in the values area. And then intention, okay, now we know that you want the new job. Get as specific as you possibly can about this job. So even if there's a specific company, a specific industry, the kind of people you want to work with, really paint the picture vividly. And when I'm working with my clients to create the intentions, I want to get my clients to a place where they feel something when they're reading that intention to me. So it's not just like, I want a new job. Like, that's meh. That's not really inspiring me to get out and do anything. It's like, I want a new job where I'm valued. I work from home half of the week. There's this really beautiful company culture and there's room to expand. All of my colleagues are amazing. They inspire me to be better. I'm learning so much. I love the development. I've never worked in corporate, but this is what I imagine it to be like in a really beautiful workplace. There's really great personal development involved and advancement. I have time to come home and spend time on my hobbies and spend time with my family after this. And I feel like when I'm showing up to my job each day, that although there are challenges, that I feel supported in advancing through them all, and that every single day I'm growing in that role. Like, there's a different feeling and an energy behind that than just like, I want a new job. And if this is something you're going to be spending a lot of time around, you want to have that feeling behind it. So we can then look at that intention and find ways to amplify that using different tools and resources. But just as a jumping off point, you want to write down what that intention actually is, make sure it's in the direction you want to go, and get really clear on that. Then with energetic blocks and boundaries, now you want to talk, directly to your subconscious mind, as our conscious mind is only responsible for 5% of our mental life. So that means like up here on a conscious level, we can write the beautiful intention. We can say, yeah, this makes me feel amazing. But the other 95%, which is actually responsible for getting your goals, is your subconscious mind. So your subconscious mind is home to your values, your intuition, your fears, your doubts. All of that stuff is subconscious. So you need to look like subconsciously what could actually stop you from getting there. So if perhaps in your previous jobs you've not been treated very well and you feel like, oh well, I'm that's how I deserve to be treated, or that's the only experience I have, you're then carrying that into your new job search. So you want to look at, first of all, illuminating what those limiting beliefs, illuminating those past experiences and potentially any traumas, and then finding ways to work through this. But the first step is always building that awareness and actually saying, what is here, what is coming up for me. And people will be like, well, how can I identify my limiting beliefs? It's actually, in many cases, it's a lot easier than we actually think, because we don't have that many discussions with ourselves. We'll have discussions with other people, but how often do you sit down to have a conversation with yourself? It's not something that we would consciously be doing like every single day. So I encourage you to have a conversation with yourself, whether that's through journaling, or I talk to myself a lot out loud. But either way that you want to do that, to ask, what are my fears? Like, how do I feel about this new job? And it's okay to actually admit that. Like, if there are limiting beliefs come up, don't just pretend that you don't feel it. Like, actually admit to yourself, like, this is something that I am worried about. And then with balancing the feminine and masculine energy, it's like, okay, so for me, when I'm manifesting something and I'm very much in my feminine energy, I spend a lot of time like meditating, connecting with my higher self, my spirit guides, and that feels really great for me. For you, that may be different, and that may look like taking more of a strategical approach, like, this is how many jobs I'm going to apply to every single day. These are the kind of people that I want to be surrounding myself with. And obviously, to actually get the job, there needs to be an element of both the practical and the spiritual. So you have to combine the spirituality with the strategy.
Unless
And
you're
then
really
with
good
this,
and it falls at your feet.
yeah. But even then, I feel like even with things falling at your feet, is not just an overnight thing. It's because of the compounded effort that you've previously put in that's
Exactly.
now getting to a point where things are like rolling over. So if you ever see someone say like I manifested something in 24 hours or I manifested this overnight, the context that is missing is all of the work that they've done previously up until that point where they can get to a thing where they can call things in quickly. So don't feel like you are behind or you're not doing things quick enough. Like just to note on that point. And then finally with the surrender piece is like knowing that once you set the intention to manifest your job, you are putting in the actions, you're doing the belief work, you are building your self-awareness through the process of self-inquiry. It is coming. And even if you're getting those rejections after rejections after rejections, these are just redirections to the job that is actually suited for you and fit for you. Like I've had times in the past where I've been like rejected from something. Even my first apartment when I moved to this building. So I put in an application for this beautiful house in Paran in Melbourne. I was like, this is it. This is my dream house. And then the application fell through at the last minute and I was really devastated. I was like, but that was my house. That was where I was supposed to live. And then a viewing for this apartment building came up. And I was like, I don't know. It seems like a little bit of a weird location, seems a bit far away. And then I got here and I was like, no, this is really the space. And then I remember my flatmate at the time, he had a bookshelf and he had a Brené Brown book, Daring Greatly. I was like, this is my favorite book. He's like, well, if you become my flatmate, you can borrow any of the books that you like. I was like, and then I left the viewing and I was like, that was my house. And then 5 minutes after I left, he texted me and was like, would you like to live here? I was like, yes.
Oh.
So although I thought that the first one was like where I wanted to live, like the next one was truly where I was supposed to be. And that was it for a time until it was time to move on to the next place. So, all of these are just like little touch points. And Bart Goldman talks about this in his book. I think it's called Quantum Jumping. And he talks about kind of how we have multiple different options and timelines, and just like one seemingly chance encounter can cause you to shift onto a different timeline. And at that time you may think nothing of it, but when you can like look back, you can see like, wow, that had a knock-on effect on so many things in the way that things have played out now. So even if you can't zoom out right now, just know that there will be a point when everything makes sense.
I want to read that. Actually, that sounds right up my alley. I think the key is, like you said, feeling it, the emotion, believing it, surrendering, knowing you deserve it, clearing anything else that makes you think otherwise, feeling it over and over and over. Meditation is a great way to do that, isn't it? Because that's, I've followed Dr. Joe Dispenza's manifestation method, and he, provides you with specific meditations to do over 30 days, for example. And you're feeling those future emotions for half an hour every day, or for half an hour in the morning, half an hour at night, every day. So the more you feel in that particular way, the more you attract that into your life.
Yeah, definitely. And it goes back to that embodying that person you want to be. Don't just be like, okay, well, 2 years from now, I'm going to be that person. It's like you're taking the action steps to feeling that way now, doing things that support that vision of you now. I always see content creators on TikTok. They're like, if you had 10,000 followers, what would you be posting? And it's that kind of energy that you want to bring to your life. Like, don't wait to hit the goal. Otherwise, you're spending your entire life like in the waiting room, and who wants to be there?
Yeah, exactly right. Well, who have been, you mentioned a couple of books that you've read that inspired you, but who have been sort of your biggest teachers when it came to manifestation?
I love David Cameron Candy. He has a book called Happy Pocket Full of Money. He talks about quantum manifestation, building wealth. And I really like the way he approaches things, and also the fact that he's a Black author as well. Carolyn Elliott has a book called Existential Kink, and I really appreciate her approach to limiting beliefs, and she discusses them in a way that I've never heard before. And in her book, there's this quote from Carl Jung, which is, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you call it fate. And essentially what that quote means is like until we bring a conscious awareness to our subconscious patterns, programming, limiting beliefs, that these patterns will continue to repeat themselves, and we'll just say, oh, well, that's just the way life is. And we have to kind of take that radical responsibility and ownership for the direction that we want our lives to go. And I actually named one of my programs after that quote, and I called it Conscious Alchemy, about the process of, alchemy, transforming a base metal into gold, and conscious is about bringing that conscious awareness to all of the subconscious programming that we have in the background. And so books, huge for me. In 2020, I committed to reading 52, and I wanted to explore everything related to manifestation, from mindset to manifestation, from physics to quantum physics. I wanted to know everything and bring all of these different perspectives in. Even astrophysics for people in a hurry, and the theory of everything were really powerful for just like seeing the way the world works and understanding just how much power we truly have, and also owning that power as well. Like, it's one thing to say like humans have so much power, but you as a human have to acknowledge like, wait, I have so much power, and I'm going to use that power that's at my fingertips.
Hell yeah. I love it. Manifest the dream that you want. Dream big, everyone. There's no limits here. We can create our own exciting and amazing and magical reality. Well, I'm actually pumped to get going on this. And I'm sure everyone else is as well. For everyone listening who wants to go deeper and perhaps would love a coach, tell us how to find you and how to get in contact and how you can help.
Yes, so you can come hang out with me on Instagram or TikTok. I'm Efia Sulter _. I also have a podcast, the Manifest Edit podcast, and I have a free training on the power of subconscious manifestation, which takes a deeper dive into that relationship between conscious and subconscious mind that I was talking about, so that you can learn how to manifest your desires on autopilot. So that's efiasulter.com/freebie. And in terms of the work that I do, it's really about helping my clients access that innate magic that we all have to expand their current reality. And a big part of that is stopping playing small and saying, no, this is truly what I'm going to stake a claim in, and I'm unapologetically going to go after this. And I deeply desire to share my gifts with the world, whatever those are.
Cool. That's great. All right. Well, I'll put a link to your website in the show notes of this episode so people can easily find you. But it's great that you've got a mixture of free and paid courses out there for everyone. So there's absolutely no limits to accessing your content and manifesting our most aligned life. Now, I never leave anyone without asking this question, and it's a big question. What's something that you have heard in your life, something that you could not unhear, something that shifted the trajectory of your life and made you look at things in a more positive way, or made you change the way that you moved forward in life? What's something that you heard that you could not unhear?
So my friend once said to me that things always work out in the end. And it's such a simple quote, but it had such a really profound impact on me. And at the time, I just got fired from a farm job. So if you don't know, if you are from overseas coming to Australia and you want to get a second year visa, you do 3 months of farm work. And I just got fired from my farm job after like 5 days on the farm. I was feeling quite distraught, and I was running out of time to actually get my days in for my visa. I'd given up my apartment in Melbourne, so I was just crashing with my friend at this point. He's like, yeah, things always work out in the end. And I felt at that point like I'm not going to find a job in time. And he said that, and it just was very comforting to me. And I actually ended up finding a job a week later that was way better than the one that I initially had. And anytime I'm in a situation now, I kind of think about what he said, and things do always work out, even if at the moment you don't have that benefit of hindsight. I just trust that his words still ring true. And I actually messaged him the other day. I was like, do you remember you said this to me? And it had a really profound impact on my life. And he's like, wow, I actually needed to hear that advice myself at this moment in time as well. So yeah, that is something that always just like in the back of my mind. And I think, often the things that you can't unhear are the simplest things have the deepest impact.
I love that. Things always work out. Thank you so much, Effie, for your time today. Thanks for listening to the show. What did you think? And what did you feel? Let us know by leaving me a message on the Things You Can't Unhear Instagram community page. And if you can, give us some ratings love on your favorite listening platform.